are y'all this evening? Yeah. I know you are because you're Unity of Houston. So we're going to have some fun tonight. Not that that's unusual for this group, because I know Michael, and I know Reverend Michael, and I know Reverend Howard, and I know several of you, and I know that Fun is your middle name, Unity of Fun Houston. So tonight, and I hope it's okay that I stay down here because I want to be close to you and really support you in moving into a greater awareness of who you are created to be. Tonight, I want us all to really begin to explore even more what is it that you would really love to experience in your life. So let's play imaginally for a little bit. So let's imagine that you're having a conversation with God, which most of us are doing that all the time anyway, right? Let's imagine that God is literally sitting down at the table with you, and I know I'm personifying God, but whatever form that takes, and you're having coffee with God, and you are telling God what is it that you really want, your deepest heart's desire. What is that conversation? When you think about the conversation with God a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and you're sharing about everything that's happened for you during that time period, what's that conversation of gratitude that you're having with God? Bring the images to mind right now. Now, I have a question for you. When you think about that image and having that conversation and looking at your life, and those of you who have worked at all with Mary Morrissey, you know the 4 areas that I'm going to be inviting you into, that when you look at the area of your health, your relationships, your vocation, how you're sharing your gifts, your talents, and your capability, and your time and money freedom, and you are singing a song of gratitude with God sitting right across the table from you, what's that conversation? What are the images that you see in this remarkable faculty of our imagination? Y'all have it? Now let me ask you something. Do you really expect that to come to pass? Do you really believe with every fiber of your being that that can actually happen? Raise your hands if you believe it. All right. I'm going to challenge you that if you raised your hand, it's not big enough. It's not big enough. Because if you really believe that it can happen, you're still in a container that's in the habit of your expectation. That we have a habit around what we expect. And if you say, yep, I believe that, I know that can happen, then what God is saying, then you're expecting too little. You're not expecting enough. That God actually wants to push us to that edge where there is that point where there's a part of us that says, oh my God, maybe this really could happen. And then there's a part of us that rises up inside and says, whoa, wait a minute. Way beyond anything I've ever thought about for myself before. Because it's in that moment, that intersection between can I really do this and the moment of disbelief that we cross the line into knowing God greater. That God is inviting us into a deeper awareness and relationship with this infinite intelligence. And the only way Spirit can do that is by knocking at the door of our heart with a desire that is so expansive, so much bigger than anything that we know that we can physically do on our own or even imagine for ourselves in the moment. But when we really let ourselves begin to play in that realm and allow ourselves to push up against the edges of our current expectations and discover what it is to allow more of God's love in our life, more of God's abundance, more of God's presence, and understand then that there is a very specific system to unlock that power and that presence, we've got the keys to the kingdom. This is what it is to have the keys to the kingdom. And this is what we're up to tonight. Y'all game? Yes. Michael, where's a clock? Because otherwise I'll... Oh, duh. Yeah.
Right here. And people in the back say they're having a hard time seeing you. Would you...
Sure. Yes. Sorry about that. Is that better? Okay. Yes. So let me share with you why I am on fire with this incarnation of my own spiritual development. I have like a part A and a part B. And my part A was when I found unity, like many of you in this room, started applying spiritual law as unity and new thought teaches, and my life transformed. How many have had that experience? Yeah, I would say most everybody in this room, if you've been around for a little bit, I mean, you all have brilliant ministers and teachers. But then there was something that happened for me that I had a burning desire to grow my impact through my work and my income. That I really wanted to make a bigger difference in the world with the way I was sharing my gifts. And quite frankly, I wanted to grow my financial freedom in order to be able to give to the organizations in a much greater way that were deeply meaningful for me. Anybody else relate to that? Yeah, that's about 3/4 of the room. And there was a particular initiative the particular work that I was pouring my heart and soul into. It got to a certain point, and then it just got stuck. And no matter how hard I worked it, no matter how much I applied spiritual law, it was not budging. And I'll never forget that there was a particular initiative that I poured a ton of energy into, thinking this is what was going to break the energy free. This was going to bust it out, open it up. And I poured everything I had into that initiative, and it fell flat. It just fell flat. And I'll never forget that afternoon. Now, I'm in Tennessee, and so you all, and I am basically from Louisiana, so, we know what southern hot July days are like, correct? I mean, I literally pretty much grew up about 2 hours east of here in Lafayette, Louisiana. But this was in Tennessee. It was one of those hot July days in Tennessee, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I am stomping around my neighborhood, absolutely impervious to the sweat streaming down my face, because I am so frustrated and really feeling like a fraud and a failure, and wondering, what am I not getting? What am I not getting? Why is this not working the way I know it's supposed to work? And I had a conversation going on in my head. Now, here's the thing that I have come to realize, and what I help people that I work with understand, is that when you pay attention to your conversation, it reflects your expectation. And God will never deliver over our expectation. God will never let me relanguage that, consistently, as a way of life. That whatever our habit is for our expectation, for the most part, that's what we're going to experience in life. And our internal conversation will reflect what that expectation is. So I'm stomping around my neighborhood, and I've got several conversations going on. One of them was, maybe you're just not cut out for this. Maybe you just don't have what it takes. Don't you think if you were going to get this figured out, you would have gotten it figured out by now? So there was that voice that said, maybe you're expecting too much of yourself. Voice number 2, maybe this is just your ego talking. Maybe it's your ego that wants you to have more. Maybe this is God's way of saying, just be happy with what you have. Anybody have that voice? Oh, come on, I know I'm not the only one in this room who's got that voice. It was the voice of, you're expecting too much from God. And then there was this insidious voice underneath that said, maybe you just don't deserve this much good. Yeah. Which was, you're expecting too much for yourself. So bring to mind whatever the voice is for you, because here's what I know. When there's something we want with every fiber of our being, and it's eluding our grasp, or there's a desire that's hanging out on the edges of our peripheral, and we're not even letting ourselves be aware of it, we've got a voice going on. So whatever your voice is, bring it to mine right now and join me that day. Because there's something that happened that was so profound that I can literally mark the trajectory of my life from that moment. There was a feeling that rose up from the very core of my being. It was a feeling of rebellion. It was the voice of truth that said, no, I don't accept those voices. That I know there's no way I can have this desire without a way to have it in my life. And I felt enough frustration. And so wherever that edge is for you, and maybe it's not a frustration, maybe it's a longing, but whatever it is, it's God's knock to invite you into a greater experience of yourself and spirit in your life. Whatever it is for you, for me, it was that moment of decision that I literally stopped in the middle of the road and I made a decision that day that I didn't care what it was going to take. I was going to get the spiritual stuff figured out. What I wanted was somebody to hand me a paint by numbers spiritual success system. Right? I wanted it simplified. I mean, I had all this information, and I did well, but that sticking point was just torturous. Bob Proctor calls it superior knowledge, inferior results. Now, it doesn't mean that my results were inferior. By no means were they inferior. They were great results, but they weren't what it was that I really wanted. So I made a decision that day that I didn't care what it was going to take. I was going to get it figured out. I also knew that I needed help, that I had gone as far as I could the way that I was doing it, and that I wanted something so structured that somebody was going to physically lead me by the hand on how to do this. That's when I began to look around to see who was teaching this stuff effectively, that the people that they were working with were showing a difference, and that they were showing a difference in their life. And that's when I found my mentor, and I know she's the mentor of many of you all in here, Mary Morrissey. This was 6.5 years ago. Made a decision to work with Mary in the most personal level that she made available. Had no idea how I was going to do that. But I remembered the decision. And a decision is, you don't look to your life to give you permission. You make the decision, and then you organize your life around that decision. And that I had made the decision that I was going to do whatever was necessary in order for me to get this stuff figured out. So I took that leap, said yes, got scooped up into a structure of support, which I am now honored to be able to support other people with. And I learned how to take what I learned and what I knew and put it into a formula that, when understood and applied consistently, has caused me to grow my life exponentially as I grow my expectation from God. That I expect more of God. And God's cheering. Because God is saying, please ask and expect. We ask for so little when God wants to give so much. So, my results, just so you can see it in real time. Stomping around that neighborhood, I was serving maybe 50, 60 people annually. It was a good work. I just wanted more. As I have applied this and changed the work that I'm doing, in this incarnation, I have the honor of serving literally thousands of people around the world, helping them build out this next level of a life that they absolutely love living. And when I look at my income, remember, my two areas were my work and my income. So look at the areas for you, whatever those areas are. Within those 4 years, I grew my income 1,000%, and it's continuing to grow. Now, take the percentage and apply it to you. What would you love to grow 1,000% in whatever area that is? And recognize it's not the result. The result's great. But remember, the real purpose of the desire is God's invitation for us to grow into a greater awareness of God's presence in our life as we grow our capacity to expect and accept more. And this is what's waiting for all of us. Y'all ready for that? All right, so those of you who have studied with Mary, I'm gonna caution you because you can't study with somebody for 6.5 years, so I'm just gonna paint it red, and not literally have them in your DNA. And so a lot of what I say is going to be very similar to what Mary teaches. But as I continue to ask myself is, at what level am I applying this, and where can I apply it even more in order to continue to grow and demonstrate an even greater result in my life? All right, so this whole system is fundamentally grounded in what we teach in unity, just fundamental teachings of unity, which is we have unlimited capacity to create anything that we can dream up. Y'all think about that. We have the most potent energy in the entire universe. There is no more powerful energy than what we wield at our fingertips. Our ability to literally take what we have in mind and weave it into the facts of our life. We have the capacity to number one, imagine a different scenario, a different possibility, a different outcome in the face of facts that are not supporting it, right? No other species on the planet that we're aware of can do that. And think about the power of that. There is no greater power than our ability to think and bring something into form. If we really thought about it, it would absolutely take our breath away at the gift that we've been given. So if that is the case, so, as we're these remarkable beings, and this creative capacity is our thinking capacity, that science is now proving what master teachers have taught throughout the ages, that what we predominantly mentally rehearse in charge with our emotions has a way that's science fictional, really. In my head, I don't begin to understand how this works, but it's a good thing I don't have to know how it works to be able to work it. But it has this, it literally impresses into this invisible field, and I call it this invisible cookie dough, and it then forms itself around the pattern that we give it. It organizes around the pattern that we're giving it with our thinking. We know this, right? If you've come to a Unity or a New Thought church for any length of time, this is our fundamental teaching. Charles Fillmore, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So if we really understood that, then we would understand the power of becoming intentional with our thinking. Because the facts are, we're creating all the time. This never stops. We're always transmitting, transacting something to this invisible intelligence, and it is always organizing according to the pattern that we're giving it. That pattern is our highest expectation. It's our highest consent to God. So if we want to grow our capacity to allow more good, to expect more good from God, then we begin to work with this intentionally. And we begin to learn to live from the most potent, powerful, holiest of all questions, which is, what would I love? What would I love? There's no more holier prayer than that, because it is love itself seeking to expand and express by means of you. So bring to mind the conversation that you were having with God at the beginning of this. Bring those images to mind. And again, put yourself in that container. See yourself living that life. Now, what makes this such a powerful tool for transformation is that if you're paying attention, you'll notice a couple of phenomenons that are getting triggered. Number one, there is that in us that is living in this time-space reality in the land of conditions that's going out and gathering the data or the proof to determine whether or not that image is realistic or not. Right? You're going to your checkbook, you're going to your calendar, you're going to the opinions of others, you're going to your past, and we look at all the reasons why what we're thinking is not realistic. Remember, the only thing this can do out here is reflect back to us our highest expectation and our highest consent. We're not going to find the proof out here. This is God knocking at the door of our hearts saying, believe more in the invisible energy moving in and through you and in the power that is you than in what you've created up to this point. That we go to our precedent to ask permission. We're not going to get it with our precedent. Yeah. I like that. So, and the second thing that happens is that we have a habit about what we expect. You know, it's fascinating to fly. I flew in today. And I listen to the conversations around me. People have no idea the power of the conversation and what we are forecasting and dictating with our words in terms of what we expect. Oh, it's going to be a bumpy flight. Oh, the traffic in Houston is horrible. Oh, I'm going to get there at 5 o'clock. And, the forecasting of the experience. Doesn't mean that the facts are necessarily going to line up, but you are defining your experience and what you expect. You have a habit for that. Your desire invites you into a different awareness and experience and invites you to grow what you expect. So we literally have to do an abundance workout, right? Where we grow our ability to allow more good. But as you work with the image, where you allow the image to become the strongest voice in your head, even when the facts are not giving you permission, and you generate the feeling state. We have two superpowers. One of them is to generate images at will, and the second one is that you get to decide how you're going to feel. That you don't have to let this out here dictate what you feel, but that you get to choose how you feel. And so when you learn to live from a second question, which is, if I really believed this was possible, what would I be feeling right now? And you cause yourself to generate that feeling. You begin to identify with the person living this dream. So here's basically the formula broken down. This is it. Image, feeling, identification. Now you're in a completely different stream of intelligence and creativity. Because now you can ask another question, which is, if I really expected this outcome, what's the action I would take right now? What's the act of faith? And then you tap into this intelligence system, and it will keep feeding you ideas, show you opportunities that are always there. They're just not available to us from the point of our habit expectation. You want to do this with a level of relentless discipline, because the voice for the familiar has not gone away. It's still, no, that's crazy. There's no proof. What are you thinking? It's like, I am thinking. That's not thinking. This is thinking. Over and over, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. As you do that, watch how you then grow your capacity to truly be present for Spirit. You grow your awareness of Spirit's activity in your life. You grow what you expect from God. You grow what you expect from life. You're taking action with a level of boldness and confidence that suggests that this really is what you expect from God, and watch how your world then rearrange us accordingly. Yeah. And you find yourself where several times a day you hear yourself saying, oh my God, I love my life. The biggest gift out of all of this, the results are great, but the results are just the evidence of who you are growing into and as the process. So just take a moment and think about this, that as you dedicate your life to living on the edge of your expectation, deep gratitude, and then on the edge of your expectation where you're always leaning more deeply into God and allowing a greater and greater degree of God's good, God's presence, God's love, awareness of God into your life. Imagine who you become and your impact that radiates out from you. Folks, not only are you transformed, but truly, this is how we transform the face of the planet. This is how we create the kingdom of heaven here on earth. Yeah, God bless.